Little Rock Board of Directors agenda meeting for today, where we set the agenda for our July 18th meeting at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. The first item on our agenda today is a presentation, a retirement recognition of Lieutenant Lonnie Miles. Chief, let me call on you and James Jones, our Assistant City Manager, for the recognition, please.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. It's kind of bittersweet here to bring Lonnie Miles, ask him to come to the podium and recognize him for 33 years of service. As always, Bruce asks every employee that retires to give give us an idea of one of their favorite memories. And reading through what Lieutenant Miles had to say is, you know, he started with the department as a cadet and as a volunteer. And one of his fond memories was, as a cadet, he got to ride in a police car. And then when he first came to work, he got to drive a police car, even if it was just to the garage. And in my first introduction to him was, we were working on a replacement plan for police cars, and he was over, you know, that area of all of our police cars. So I find it kind of interesting and ironic that something that was a dream of his, that riding a police car, he ultimately was responsible for all of our police cars and making sure they were maintained and where they were assigned and everything. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and we're going to miss you. We wish you well. And I'd like to invite Chief Buckner up to say a few things about Lieutenant Miles.
Oh, he got his beard going. Mayor, Vice Mayor, the board. Lonnie Miles has been a good support for me. I'm not a techie guy myself. I kind of fumble through most of those things. I understand the general aspects of things. But his most recent capacity for us, Lonnie has been a heavy hand in our IT and our fleet. Two areas that I don't really have a lot of deep dealings with. And in many instances, you know, IT folks will send us over some IT mumbo-jumbo stuff, and then Lonnie will translate that to me as to what that means to the police department. And and then in addition to that, the civilian that was working there with him also left their division. So this is a huge blow for us, but at a time when we're trying. But he did help to construct the new replacement plan that we have in place for our vehicles, which is huge for us. But the IT part of that, who also has a police understanding, is very important for us. And we are certainly going to miss Lonnie. I know he's looking forward to spending time with his wife. He mentioned that in his note, and his family. He's got a son. Your son is Wyoming.
Yes.
Got a son in Wyoming. So we're certainly going to miss Lonnie. He has been a huge part of our operations there at headquarters, and 33 years of service certainly deserves an applause.
Well, board directors, everybody else who showed up, my friends and co-workers, and some of these are my brothers and sisters because I worked with them so long. We fought like brothers and sisters and cats and dogs sometimes, but we always got along together when it came down to the end, and that was always one of the greatest things that I enjoyed working with some of the people. By no means am I just one person who made a whole bunch of things happen. I always was lucky enough to work with a bunch of individuals, our IT department, other police officers, some civilians. I had 2 civilians working with me, actually 3. I had Terrence McClay and Officer Lee here at the very end that were working with me. And we formed a team, and a lot of things were always done as a team. So by no means, a lot of things I accomplished was because of the team and not because of individuals. It's been great working here. 33, almost 34 years. Most of the thing I missed is a lot of the people I worked with, and I'll enjoy it, and especially my wife, who has to go to work every day.
Lonnie, do you want to introduce your family members that are here, please?
This is my wife, Lisa. My son is not here. He's in the Air Force in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I think we'll probably have another retirement ceremony that he'd rather come to. He deals in missiles right now, so sometimes it's not as easy to get away from work as we do. Since I've driven it several times, he's 1,150 miles away. Yeah, so that's how he is. But it's been great. I want to thank you guys for your support. The chief has a lot of things he's going to do, and I hate to have to leave him and give him some new people to work with, but y'all will be all right. Thank you very much.
Lieutenant, today on the news, they announced that honeydew season in Arkansas just started. So I don't think Monday's going to be a problem for you.
You'd be surprised I got one already at home about like this. It hadn't quite ripened yet, and it seems to be growing. So I'm going to pull it from the vine if you say the honeydew season is here.
All a definition.
Yes. Thank you.
Director Hendricks would like to make a comment, please.
I just wanted to share with the people that are present I've known Lonnie all of his life, and I said to him, if I had known, Phyllis would have been here because she worked in communications for about 15, 16 years. And I wanted to ask you if you would have your coworkers to stand. Come on. And I wish you the best. Come
Well, thank you.
Come and see us.
It's always been a pleasure doing a job you love to do, and it was hard to go, but it was time to go.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Good luck, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Okay, we can, Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Well, he's gone now, Mayor. I want to thank him, Lieutenant Miles and Terrace. I see you still there. Mayor, I just want to certainly thank him for his 33 years of service, but more importantly, his professional representation of our Little Rock Police Department. I think he carried himself in a professional manner, excellent manner, and he represented us well, and very well. And I think that we're certainly in debt to him for a number of years of service he provided to us, but more importantly, the representation of our police force.
You know, and starting as a cadet, I think that reinforces the importance of a cadet program as a feeder into our police department, and I know we're working on reestablishing that cadet program, so very important.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we can move on to the modification page. We've got some additions, Resolution M1, M2, and M3. If you look at those, and if there's no objection, we will put these on the consent agenda. Oh, well, we're not in a meeting, but if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and add them based on your request. Thank you. Okay, if you look at the items 1 through 6, and let me ask if there's any questions. There was one issue that came up in our meeting this afternoon, and Mr. Carpenter, if you would just check on the issue that you raised about whether we convey by warranty deed or by other special deed, please. And if that needs to be modified in any way, we'll do that with the information that comes out, and we can move forward on those. One other issue, I know I talked with Director Adcock, and I talked with Doug Tapp about the item on item 3, where Mr. Akins wishes to build a single-family residence across the street. As I recall, we always had provisions in there where we had some plan and we had some timeline to do that. And if you'll just follow up on that, and I don't know if that impacts the deed or not, but if you'll work with Mr. Carpenter on that, we'll take care of that as well. Okay, if there's no other questions about the consent agenda, we can move on to the planning and development item, which is only, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Director Hendricks.
I just wanted to comment on number 5. I worked diligently with
Okay,
this.
go ahead.
Yeah, on 5, I really worked with the pastor and the clerk of the church a number of years, and I did not know that they had come this far.
That they what?
They come this far, where they will be a part of a program, and that the property will transfer and all of that. I know she said something to me at church the other day, but it was quick. But apparently this is what she was talking about.
I think this is going to be used for a parking, is that right? If you want to come forward, Mr. Tapp. Resolution 5.
Yes, sir. Mayor, City Board, Resolution 5, that's correct. It's adjacent to two other parking lots that they own, and it's across the street from the church. That's what he shared with me when he sent in the offer, was a parking lot.
It was a big tent there at one time across the streets, and that was taken down many, many years, a few years
So
ago.
is it going to be used as a parking?
Yes, sir.
I see, okay. Very good.
It's
Thank you.
zoned, it's zoned as such, and that's okay.
All right. Director Hines, you have a question or comment?
This is on our planning and development when we get to.
Okay, let me just see, Director Richardson, is yours on? On which item? Okay, go ahead. And Director Hines, I'll take you when we move on to the planning and development items.
Yes, just one quick question with respect to the items that you got Tom working on, specialty deeds or warranty deeds. Are we talking about land bank properties only specifically, or does this include
Yeah.
other properties, Tom, just land bank properties? Thank you.
That's what these are all land bank
Yes, sir.
properties. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Wyrick, did you have a question on? Okay, let me move to Director Hines then.
Mine's on 7 as well.
Okay, go ahead if you would.
Presentation, please.
You would like a presentation?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
No, on just 7. Did you say all?
Director Hines, did you wish a presentation on item 7?
7, yes.
All right, thank you.
Is that one of them? Okay.
Get the overall map up. The overall.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, I'd like to go over the general stuff before how we got to this at this time. We're bringing this before the board to approve the revisions to the adopted land use plan. The area presented in front of you is west of Interstate 430, south of Chenal Parkway and Canis Road, extending west to the extraterritorial boundary. The city of Little Rock, along with that area, is divided into 7 general areas across the extraterritorial and the city limits. And we review this on a 4 to 5 year cycle. This section is, we don't really have names for them, but is the 6th of the 7th area that we're going to do. We anticipate that we're going to bring the 7th area back in front of the board back in the first quarter of 2018 for review. And when we do this, this is just a cleanup process of our land use plan that we go through and review all these. We began looking at this area back in December of 2016. The existing development pattern, as well as the existing zoning and recent reclassification actions, we reviewed all those. In May of 2016, we sent letters to all the neighborhood associations in the area asking for suggested changes in the area, and then we reviewed some of the general guidelines, what we were reviewing all this for, and we began all of our field reviews. From our initial notification, we received comments from 2 associations, and both of those associations were concerned about the location of multifamily in their area. After the field visits and discussions, we developed a package of changes and identified affected property owners. All the affected property owners were contacted with about the possibility of changing the land use for their property. Staff received 1 informational phone call from that and notifying them of their property changes, and then we explained the property changes, and after that explanation, they were okay with the changes in the land use. In response to the second notice mail, staff received no comments as a result of the mailings. Staff believes this package of changes is just a cleanup to more accurately reflect the current land use of the area for those areas, which are 8 proposed. 1 is within the city limits, 7 of them are in the extraterritorial boundaries. With that, any questions that I can entertain?
Director Hines?
So on the one, I guess it's I'm trying, these maps are real hard to say. I guess it's zoning map 1.
I put in individual maps for each individual areas.
I think that's it. I'm trying to get it's hard to get a bearing on where that is. That's Canis and what's the next cross street? Rawling Road. So is this the, that's an area that's primarily residential, right?
Right now, it's zoned, a portion of C3 and R2. That's correct.
So what are we going to on it?
We're going to, office, for that area.
Okay,
SO is suburban office.
okay. I'm just trying to get a bearing on this. So and the main thing is the property owners have been notified and there's been no objection from the actual property owners.
No, none from the actual property owners.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is the RH for residential
High density.
high density?
That's correct.
So you're looking at multifamily, is that?
No, it's residential high density to, suburban office.
And the reason I ask is because there's a for sale sign up on that that's marketing it as potential multifamily. That's why I was asking.
But, yeah, residential high density would be.
Right, but my question is if a real estate agent, I'm wanting to make sure we've got proper, I don't want to get a call on this next week because the property owner says they weren't given proper notification on the change.
Yes, all property owners affected were notified.
Okay, thank you.
But I think probably more importantly, so from a planning standpoint, you believe that high-density residential is an appropriate use in this area?
Yes, well, the suburban office is what we're wanting to go to. Residential right now is R2, which is not high density to the point that it is. And if you look onto the north, it's office, planned commercial, and C3. So at that intersection, it is more going to a commercial office
I see,
use.
so you're moving it from residential high
Yes,
density
that's
to
correct.
commercial. Okay. Director Wyrick, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Jamie, for coming to talk to us about this. Your explanation was very helpful to start off with. This is not tricky questions like you had last week, so these are pretty these are pretty straightforward. The items that I was interested in are 5 and 6, and they're categorized as residential low density, and it says that there'll be single-family homes not to exceed 6 units per acre, and they may include patio, garden homes, and cluster homes. So I guess there's not any apartments that can go into the RL zoning?
Well, please keep in mind, this is just the land use plan. This
Right.
is a projected of what we would like to see done in that area.
I understand.
And so currently, there's not. If they want to present something in there, they would have to come in, and make the application. And then if it would not be part of the use that we would go to, then we'd have to evaluate that and see if there's something that the staff would support in
Okay, if
that
I
growth in
came
that
to you
area.
and I said I wanted to do multifamily in this location, what would you tell me?
I would look at it and tell you that it doesn't meet the land use plan.
Okay,
And then I'd have to look at what they was proposing and how it affected adjacent property owners, consult with staff,
okay,
with our planning and our zoning department, and then, come up with a recommendation.
okay. That really wasn't a trick question. Item number 7 is going to open space, and do we have plans for a park or something at that location that you're aware of?
No, we don't have plans for a park. That is a creek, and if you look just to the, on the land use change area, Scott, I think it's the previous one. Yeah, there. If you look over just on your screen to either side, you'll see that it is park open space
Okay.
already on the land use.
Okay.
So that just makes the tie between the area for the creek.
Okay, and I was looking at I was interested in who, if there was any comments from any representatives from neighborhood groups, and I didn't see anything in the write-up, and you said you had one informational call. We talked the other night about neighborhood associations and being able to notify the right people at those locations. And it looked like to me that you had a pretty comprehensive list of, I can't find it now, but you had a pretty comprehensive list of the people that would be impacted in that area. So
Yes, there was a comprehensive list of all the neighborhood associations in there, and we did contact them. All I can tell you is the two that we were contacted, and I didn't list them when I said, I just said there was two, was Spring Valley Manor and Plantation Acres. Was the two neighborhood associations that actually contacted us from the initial, the very first, and just expressed their concerns of multifamily
yeah.
growth in their area.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Director Hendricks?
The separate item number 8 is what I was concerned.
Okay.
It's
Are
not
there any
there
other
yet.
questions on item 7? All right. And Mr. Collins, if you'll address item 8 for, well, I guess that's not yours, actually, is it?
I hope not.
No, that's not yours. Scott, if you would show us the slides, and then I think Victor Turner is here who can answer any questions on that.
Ridiculous. Damn shame.
Okay, Director Hendricks, do you have any follow-up questions on these items?
I sure do. And I hope that the persons that are observing this or watching this will see what areas these houses are located in. And I want to ask Tom, does this ordinance have anything to do with what I was asking?
Not,
Yes or no?
well, in the sense that if they're demolished, we can have a demolition lien on the property and then take title to it, yes.
But my question is, does this ordinance have anything to do with the eminent domain and all this that I was talking about?
That's what I just answered, is that if we demolish the structure, then the cost of the demolition can become a lien, and on that, we can get a foreclosure on it, take the property.
It's not what I asked for. That's all I want to. Thank you.
Okay, Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. James, this may be a question for you or Victor. Can we get a number to date of home demolished per ward? And for those of us who are mathematically challenged, to give us percentages to date of the numbers that we've had demolished. And Victor, some point in time, or over a period of time, it may be, my request may graduate into the number per ward that we had declared vacant and unsafe. But I think some of these structures are in condition that we can offer incentives so we can have people rehab them and bring them back to livable conditions. And some of us don't equate demolition with neighborhood improvement. So I think there's some right now, we may have it on our list, Victor. You can come up if you want to. That we may have on our list right now that may be condemned and vacant and unsafe, but not necessarily in position or condition where we had to demolish them and figure out a way we can provide incentives to bring those up to bear and offer those chances for people to come back and rehab those, because I don't necessarily equate demolition with neighborhood improvement. Have some of these communities look like war zone. So I'd like to have the number of homes demolished per ward to date, and for those of us who are mathematically challenged, what those percentages represent.
Okay. Yeah, Mayor, members of the board, I believe we sent an update with the number of demolitions by ward.
You did?
Yeah, a couple times. And I believe we also have sent a list of unsafe vacant ones, but we'll give an updated list of that. And then recently, we have worked with a couple developers that were interested in looking at the properties that we were considering sending for condemnation as possible redevelopment opportunities, which is what you're talking about. So it's just a matter of finding people interested in going to some of the areas and doing the work. But we'll get you an updated list.
Thank you, sir. And all the lists that you made reference to, they're broken down by wards, number per ward?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Director Adcock, you're recognized.
Victor, yesterday, Mr. Jones and I went to visit Forest Hills neighborhood, and there's 3 boarded up, burned out houses. In fact, the back of one of them is all opened, and it looks like they have been burned for quite a while. Would you please check on those 3 houses that have been burned and see if we can't get them up on a list to get it tore down?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to just a notice that we'll go into executive session, hopefully, to take care of appointments to boards and commissions, which gets us to item 10, which is an update on from Central Arkansas Water, dealing with our future water sources. Tad Bohannon, the director, is with us. Welcome, Tad.
Welcome. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, directors. I'm happy to be here again, so it's good to see you all. Wanted to give a quick update after some questions came up from Councilman Compuris, and tell you what's going on with Lake DeGray. Lake DeGray is director, sorry. I've been working on alderman, councilman, and sorry about that. But Lake DeGray is a third alternative water source that we've been working with the Corps of Engineers since 1988, actually, was when Little Rock Municipal Water Works first acquired the right of first refusal to 100 million gallons of water out of that lake. There's a map here showing you that it is quite a ways away, but it is available and it's a good quantity of water. It would double the amount of water that we have available to serve our citizens with, and it would replace Lake Maumelle. Heaven forbid anything ever happen to the water that's available out of Lake Maumelle, which we work very hard to protect. If you want to go to the next slide. And so I want to give you a little quick lesson on water storage rules, because this is a core lake. And in most lakes, there are different pools set forward, and there's an actual segment of the lake or storage capacity that is allocated to water supply. And once you have that water supply storage, then you can use that storage. Go to the next slide, please. However, when Lake DeGray was built back in the late 50s, early 60s, it does not have a separate pool for water supply. It has a combined pool that is both used by hydropower, water supply, and environmental. And they call it a joint pool. And the Corps takes the position that every drop of that water should be available to serve all 3 of those purposes. And that's where we get into a little bit of discussion with the Corps about where we want to take water from. Next slide, please. So, Lake DeGray upper pool is the water above the dam. You see it says 120 million gallons per day for water supply, and that's what we're discussing with the Corps, that we would like to take the water supply straight out of that upper pool. The Corps would like the water to run through the hydroelectric turbines to generate hydroelectric power, and then for us to take the water out of the lower pool below the dam that's a re-regulating pool, and that we take the 120 million gallons per day out of that pool. There's 2 problems with that. One, we like the water quality in the higher pool. It's a deeper pool. It hasn't been disturbed. We're used to high quality water coming out of Lake Winona and Lake Maumelle, and we'd like that higher quality water. Next slide, please. This is just a map showing the areas where they are. The other is that upper pool and lower pool, there's a difference of 188 feet. Every foot we go down means to get the water to Little Rock, we have to pump it back up, which is an O&M cost forever for as long as we're operating that as a water supply. So you can go to the next slide, please. So it's a long ways away. We've already identified intake sites in the main pool. That's where those red dots are. That is where we'd like to take the water. It's where we believe we can get the highest water quality. The Corps said, fine, you can take the 120 million gallons out of the upper pool, but you must pay power for gone. And power forgone is the amount of money that the electric companies lose because the water does not run through the hydroelectric plant before we take it out. So if we take out the 120 million gallons early, they can't run it through the hydroelectric dam, so they want us to take it out. That number is for the next 12 years about $2 million a year, and after that it's $1 million a year. I do not want the ratepayers of Central Arkansas Water or your citizens that you all represent having to pay that $2 million when we're not taking a drop of water out of the lake at this time. It will take us a number of decades to get there. We don't need the water right now. This is a future supply that we'll have available at a future date. So we've been in discussions with the Corps and the Southwest Power Pool, which is the federal regulatory agency, to say we want to buy our storage, we want to buy the bucket, but we don't want to pay for power forgone until the day we take water. Until you can't use the water for power, we don't want to pay for it. So we've had numerous discussions. We've brought in people from all over the country. Representatives from Washington have been here, including our representative from our elected officials in Washington, who are very engaged in this process. And so we are working with the Corps. Our last phone call was actually a conference call was on June the 20th. And they were talking about, well, what if you pump the water back, and what if you, I said, y'all don't get it. We're not going to pay you all this amount of money, and we're not going to build the infrastructure, because this is water that we've been planning on for years and that we've been working on. So here's the proposals I gave them, and you can go to the next slide. I said, look, we won't pay until we take out water out of the pool, and they said fine, and hydropower actually said fine. We get it. We get your concern. We understand what you're looking for. We also talked about we're not going to come for all 120 million gallons at once. We're going to come for 50 million gallons at some point in the future, and then we might come for another 50 million gallons in the later future, but we're not going to build one pipeline to come get it all at once, probably. We don't know. We're talking decades out. So give us some flexibility here. So the other thing that we said is we want to phase in. We want to be able to say, okay, we're going to take 50 now, so we'll pay for half the power forgone, and then we'll take the other 50 later, or 70 later, or however that would work. Vicksburg, to their credit, which is the Corps office, actually wrote the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works in a white paper, and they said, look, they've proposed a proposal that is advantageous to both hydropower and water supply. They called it an innovative approach. There's nothing like this anywhere else in the country. So they said, look, this is going to require a non-standard agreement, but we would like you all to approve it. And that's where we are right now. The letter went out the last week of June. We're in the federal government system. We understand how that works. It doesn't always turn quickly. But Southwest Power Pool which is different than the Southwest Power out in West Little Rock, so just know that. But the federal regulatory agency, Southwest Power Administration, they're all in, they say this works for us, and so that's where we are. And as soon as we can reach an agreement with them, then we will go ahead and buy the storage. We'll buy the bucket. We'll buy the storage space, so we'll have the water available. And that's where we are. Questions?
Director Campiris.
Well, Dan, I appreciate you coming, and I agree with everything you said except one thing. Based on the way, well, two things. One is, I think it's imperative that we own it for lots of different reasons. And the way things are going today, there's no question that someone can come and say, if you just have an agreement to get it, that someone else may be able to come and say, I know you have that agreement, and we're going to nullify it and send it to Dallas or someplace else. And as you know, that was a proposal that Wilbur Mills took care of a long time ago. Secondly, if things change, it may not be generations before we need this water. And if we don't have it, and we don't have it from the correct pool, and we don't have it where we don't have to pump up 180 feet to get it to Little Rock, then it's going to cost everybody a lot more money. So I applaud your innovative approach. I'm glad y'all are working on it, but my thought is that we need to get it tied up, legally put it in a package that no one can break into, and then wait till we need this, because everybody's going to have their commodity that's going to make a difference in the next generation. It turns out water may be ours, and I think it's going to be a commodity that will be equally as good as the gas and oil in West Texas and that sort of thing. And so I would urge y'all to continue the path you're on right now and get this wrapped up as soon as we can.
Yes, sir.
Tad, do you think that this non-standard agreement can provide some protection in terms of our priority?
It certainly. I mean, we could buy it tomorrow, but if we bought it tomorrow, we have two options. We can agree to take it below the dam, or we can pay the power for gone. I don't like those options, but as far as once you get the storage, it's yours. You've paid for it. It's,
I mean, what prevents some other entity from coming in and saying, we'll buy it right now?
they could, but we've already exercised our option, so we could, here's your money, we got it, and we'd have to deal with one of those two factors.
So what you're saying is you're protecting it, plus you're getting a right of first refusal or an option?
We already have a right of first refusal.
You already have the right of first refusal.
That's correct. And so, we've got the money, we can pay for it. If somebody comes along tomorrow and they send us a letter that says, we've got a letter here with a check attached to it, we can say, well, we'll take it. And at that point, which of those two options we would take, we would have to have some serious conversations about. But I'm trying to avoid either one of those two options and get a third option.
But what you're saying is that we've got the option and so, and a right of first refusal, so we are protected.
That is correct.
Okay. Director Fortson.
Tad, give me some basis for comparison. You said 50 million gallons. How many gallons are we taking out of Maul? How long does it take us to take 50 million gallons out of Maul Mill?
Our average day is 62 million gallons a day.
So really, it's
we get 20
supplemental storage. Is what
we get 20 million gallons a day out of Winona, and we take the rest out of Lake Maumelle. Our peak day is about 126 million gallons, and that's when everybody's running full bore, and it's 120 degrees for the past 15 days, and everybody's got their sprinkler system on.
Just to sort of hitchhiking on Director Campuris's question, under the best estimates of your experts, what is our capacity in terms of months and years presently under what you have in Maumelle and Winona?
With current growth and current users, we have water in Winona and Maumelle to last us to 2080 or beyond. We know we have enough to get to 2080.
One last question. I'm trying to, in an earlier briefing, in fact, it predates you, when Graham Rich was here, do I recall correctly that also Hot Springs was negotiating for access to DeGray?
Hot Springs, of that 120 million gallons I was talking about, Hot Springs is working with us on 20 million gallons, and we have the 100 million.
Okay. So that's still in process with that kind of?
They've paid us, and we're working with them on this deal.
That's all I have.
Director Hines, you're recognized, please.
So this agreement covers both. This will apply to Hot Springs too, because I know they're the ones needing access to it.
That is correct.
Before us, and it's just as important to them to have it from that same access point as we are.
That is correct.
We're going to co-locate, so we get to share some of the cost.
Co-locate, so there'll be development cost of site development costs that would be shared the cost of getting power to the location, and we would also share some of the easements coming back to the east.
Okay.
So that there would be some cost savings there also.
Super. Tad, thanks for your work on this. I know it gets complicated, especially when you're dealing with the Corps out of Vicksburg. There.
Yes, it is.
Our local Corps folks are a little more reasonable than the Vicksburg office. I've had some dealings with them on some duck hunting stuff. So
I'll leave it. I'll let you say
that. One other thing I want to pitch out there, since you started talking about sprinkler systems, and you and I have had a conversation about it several times. I would be more than happy, and it's not been a big issue this year because we've had a pretty mild summer, but taking a new tack on getting folks to comply with running their sprinkler systems off-peak. And I know we use the surcharge method, which I don't think has had a big impact on peak hour usage. I'd like to use more of a stick approach and make it illegal for folks to water their lawns between 5 a.m. and 8. Everybody's got them on timers. I've got mine. I don't run mine on peak, but I see it every morning when I'm going to work. And I think that would be a much better approach to getting compliance with folks to get us off peak. So that invitation is there if you want to take me up on it. So, and we'll have to get into how we would enforce that, Tom, but
I don't have the authority to make certain actions illegal. That has to come from you all. So if you all want to pursue that, I'd be happy to.
I think what are peak hours considered? 5 a.m. to 8 or 9 a.m.
It's about 5 a.m. to 8.
Yeah. So
it's everybody getting ready. They all wake up. They start their dishwasher before they leave the house for the day. They wash a load of clothes that they're going to throw in the dryer that night, and everybody in the household takes a shower. And then people turn their sprinklers on at the same time.
And the ultimate deal is if we could reduce peak, that maybe we could get rid of that surcharge for a sprinkler meter.
We can discuss that.
Thanks, Tad.
No problem.
Thank you, Tad.
Always a pleasure to be here. Don't hesitate to call me if you need anything. Thank you all very much.
Very good. Okay, our next presentation is an update on the committee that has been dealing with large group feeding. And let me welcome Jordan Johnson, who's the committee chair. And I see you have several members of your committee with you.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce them as well, if you would, Jordan?
Yes, if y'all stand up. If you're on the committee, please stand up. And I'm on a, Scott, will you go ahead and switch the slide that has, show the complete list. But we've got several in the room, and also those who have attended the meetings and are not on the committee. Go ahead and stand up if you don't mind, please. We've got a lot of support, and I can't thank them enough for their time and then even being here today. So,
very good. Thank you for being here.
The mayor, vice mayor, members of the board, thank you all for your time. My name is Jordan Johnson. Some people refer to me as an arrow catcher on this event. But as you know, y'all put together a very diverse committee that is made up of homeless advocates, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, homeless people, and city officials. And we've kind of looked at this as an opportunity. And I want to thank y'all for that, because I think for the first time, this is helping unite the homeless advocates throughout our city under or towards working towards one cause. And so I commend y'all on that and the way that this is shaped up. I also want to commend the leaders that stood up on their commitment. The path has been long and weary, and y'all gave us a charge for 45 days and report back. And I'm grateful that pending y'all's decision tonight, that these people remain steadfast and committed to the cause and will continue to meet, should y'all be so open to do so. In addition to their time, they've given their resources. They've also been yelled at. They've also been accused of a few things from a few select people who seem to refuse to even try something new. So I want to appreciate them on standing up in the heat of the battle. I also want to thank the homeless advocates and the faith-based groups for helping the committee and who continue to serve those essential groups. Our city is better because of them, and many of them are, again, here tonight. My mother told me change is tough and compromise is even tougher, and I have realized that very, very quickly on this endeavor. As a city, I believe we must change and find a better way to help the homeless. In addition to serving them food, we need to help connect them to the other essential social services that they desperately need, so that they can have the opportunity, like the rest of us have, to rise up and be the best among themselves. And in essence, we need to try a more holistic approach, and that is exactly what I'm here before you tonight, representing the group as we try to take on that endeavor. As a city, I believe we can do better and should do better. As a person of faith, I believe we can do better. And as a Little Rock citizen, community volunteer, and father of 3, I want to make sure that our city takes a very thoughtful and compassionate approach when we work with the homeless. And while our committee's recommendation, and I will get to that in just a minute, is by no means perfect, as Vice Mayor said so eloquently the other day at our meeting, it is a start, and a start is something. So first off, let me explain to you what our proposal doesn't do, just to clarify some points. It does not limit or curtail food sharing for and to the homeless. It doesn't eliminate food sharing in downtown Little Rock. We know very well groups such as the Salvation Army and others have a very good track record of providing food to others. And it also doesn't solve homelessness. But here's what our recommendation does do. It unites. And for the first time, we have homeless advocates sitting in the same room at the same table, working together. And I think that is something that we should all be very proud of. It expands. It attempts to start pairing the faith-based communities' servicing of providing meals with the hope for better access to a broader range of services for the homeless. And most importantly, it builds. Through this effort, we're building coalitions that connect the faith-based community and the homeless advocates with the business community, the nonprofit community, and the city in a much more efficient and effective approach. We've already had offers and help from entities like David's Burgers, who Alan is actually on the committee, owner of such a great establishment. By the way, great burger too. No, not giving you an advertisement, but it's my favorite. Gus's Fried Chicken stepped up big time to help Jericho Way last week. Big Whiskey's Whole Hog in North Little Rock, and even the Clinton Foundation has offered to help with this new approach. And if approved tonight by y'all, I anticipate other groups will step up thanks to the efforts of Gabe Holmstrom and the Downtown Partnership for which he works. They have done a lot of work reaching out to people who have always wanted to help but didn't know how to help. And now that there might be an efficient model to get behind and try, they are willing to help. And so I commend Gabe on his efforts. Now let me share with you, before we get to the recommendation, how we ultimately came to our unanimous decision and recommendation. We did meet during the 45-day period several times. We did a lot more listening than talking. People like Dot and others taught us a lot. And these meetings were very well attended by the public. I know, Mayor, you attended one. Vice Mayor, you attended all of them. We also asked the city and the homeless advocates to compile a list of locations when and where meals were being served to the homeless throughout the city. Scott. And I don't want to go into detail on all these, but that is where breakfast is served. And again, we had people provided this information and compiled it. I think it's the first time I've ever seen it. Some in the city said it was the first time they've ever seen it. And we only had one entity refuse to cooperate. And so I commend people on that. So, okay, go to the next slide, Scott. That's where lunch is served. And then next slide, Scott, that's where dinner is served. As you can see, there are a lot of options, which makes me feel very proud for our city and our community for the amount of outreach. We also set up a subcommittee of a larger group, and these people were tasked with meeting with the city, the various church groups within the Broadway Bridge group, Jericho Way, River City Ministries, and others. They did yeoman's work, and these people are to be commended for their efforts. They met in the wee hours of the morning before work. They met in the wee hours of the evening after work. And if y'all go with this proposal or our recommendation, we will continue to meet with these groups. We've met with 6 church groups to date who are part of Under the Bridge. We want to meet with all of them if we can, because we believe we can find some common ground. Now I want to share with you a gentleman by the name of Derek who's on our committee. He's supposed to be here tonight. I believe he's actually working, and I want to thank Alan for helping this gentleman find work. Scott, would you put that up on the screen? He wanted this read tonight because he couldn't be here. This is Derek Clark, and he is a member of the homeless community, and he attended every meeting we had. He was on time, and he contributed a large part to this group. So to the committee, I'm honored I'm honored you to have invited me to the City Hall meeting. Unfortunately, I have prior obligations. I just want to say I fully support the decisions that we made during our meeting. Jericho Way will be a good place to service the homeless because it helps minimize the conflicts in Riverfront Park, and is a good place to work on solving the serious homeless issues like mental illness, drug addiction, and housing. I believe this committee is committed to finding solutions for making Little Rock a better community for all parties concerned. I was very impressed with the teamwork from the business community, the homeless providers, and all concerned attending the meeting. I'm very glad I had the chance to participate in an awesome movement, and I can't wait to see what the future will bring. That is from committee member Derek Clark, who was unable to be here because he has a new job. So I'm grateful for his input. I also want to give a big thanks to some other groups. This is the City of Little Rock. Your city manager's office stepped up immensely. Y'all have made hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment in Jericho Way. When we met with them, and Mandy and Dot works volunteers out there as well, they have data, they have stats to back up what they're doing. What they're doing is, it works. Now, are they open when we are wanting to do our proposal? No. But the idea is, if we can open minds and change hearts by getting people there willing to provide meals to serve others there next to Jericho after hours, then we can justify need for maybe the private community, like they're starting to right now, to step up and support efforts to open up Jericho Way, maybe on a longer term basis, longer hours, that sort of thing. It provides the people who need the food also access to those essential services. But we've got to show that there is a need yet. Is there a risk of failing? Absolutely. Do we lose anything by trying? No, I don't think so. So with that, Scott, would you put up the recommendation by the committee? I'm sorry I did not go in order, Scott. I apologize. But I do like your coat, so we'll go with that. Okay, so this is the committee's unanimous recommendation. After exploring a litany of options, we came down to this, a 90-day trial period. We are asking y'all to allow us to continue our work as an ad hoc committee, volunteer. The city, working with the city manager's office, they've agreed to step up above and beyond. Again, it's about compromise. The city is doing more than they said they would. We're asking the faith-based community who serve other places and under the bridge to do, to meet us in the middle and serve, if they may, at this location. The city is committed to providing transportation, additional transportation to and from Jericho Way. We'll meet with all the participants, as I said, regarding the Broadway Bridge project. And we're going to continue to meet and assess and measure the success of this. In fact, we have our next meeting on the 27th. It's already scheduled at the Clinton Center. The Clinton Center is going to provide breakfast for our committee because apparently these people like to meet in the early morning, to my dismay, but that's okay. So that's what we're asking of you. Let me tell you a couple other things that we're going to try to do. The maps that you saw, the listing of where people are serving others, that's a good resource. I haven't seen it like that. I think it could be helpful to others. And we had discussed, and we didn't make a formal recommendation on this, but there has been some discussion about adding that to some sort of website so that we can have a place, direct people to a place where what's going on, when it's happening, how it's happening, so that people can see, one, the overall compassion our city has for other people. That's the good, but also it shows the desperate need that we have. The other thing, and this is actually something that other cities around the country have promulgated rules for, and looks like y'all are not going to have to do this as well. I had a number of calls from people, some complaining about this or that, but I had two gentlemen, business owners, who called, and I know them both. I won't name them by name. I expected to be chewed out, and I expected to be yelled at, and they held their breath. They actually said, I have no problem with what y'all are doing, but I want to enlighten you on Styrofoam. We have business around these places, and it's not the people serving who are causing the problem. It's after, and they do clean up. It's after they leave. They serve in styrofoam clam trays. And so what happens is when they go away, the people take the food and eat, and those get discarded on the ground. And what happens is they get washed into storm drains. And what happens, it doesn't biodegrade and it stops up storm drains. And y'all spend a lot of precious time and resources on stopping those storm drains. And also, when it gets mowed over, it looks like the area's been snowed. It never biodegrades. So we proactively, based upon getting these calls, we proactively asked the faith-based community who's been serving at Under His Throne Ministries if they would consider going to paper products. That helps biodegrade. It gets mowed over, it disintegrates. And they unanimously said they agreed to do that. So I want to commend them on another positive aspect that we made. So with that, that is the committee's recommendation to y'all to allow us to keep moving forward. And Mayor, I know that you've offered to even build a pavilion out there, permanent structure. And Gabe wanted to save you a little bit of money and said, let's do a firework tent. Let's do a circus tent. And let's see if it works first. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to the drawing board. If it does work, you can have justification to build your pavilion.
Well, yeah, a tent or any type of an area to give some shelter to people is very important, I think. And you make a good point that I think that you know, the city has stepped up in the past with Jericho Way, and close to $1 million put into the building itself. In fact, there's a soft opening of the basement where an additional 4,500 square feet is going to be made available for services. Thankfully, a benefactor came forward to me and offered to pay for that, and so that's been a wonderful addition, and will be a wonderful addition. Just so everybody knows, the reason why Jericho Way has the hours that it does really is dictated to by the shelters themselves. One of our functions is to make sure that we don't, our van system, our bus system that we have, if you will, doesn't drop people off just indiscriminately. We drop them off at shelters where they get that, hopefully, that temporary supportive help in terms of housing. And so in order to meet the obligations of those shelters, which require that people be in by a certain time, we have to leave, the buses have to leave with those people when they do. And we stop by the VA drop-in center as well. So there's a real method to this. Certainly, if the community can come forward and offer additional funding where we can make arrangements to see Jericho Way open longer, I think the access to services is what's critical. You're exactly right. Mandy Davis and the group that is running that organization is got some tremendous success efforts under their way in terms of housing, in terms of medical health and services, helping people find jobs. We're working, in fact, Doug Tapp was here earlier, we're working on locating properties in the area where we can create housing for people, then getting them off of homelessness. And so I think the effort to try and pull people together and continue to work toward those objectives is what's really important. And my hope is that the people who aren't yet willing to participate will come on board and give it a chance. And so I appreciate all the hard work your committee has done. It's really a great testament to the community coming together and trying to find some solutions to these very difficult challenges that we have in a city like Little Rock, and like other cities have in an urban area.
Well, I hope you applaud all these people here that work on this day and night. So thank you all.
It looks like we have some board members that wish to comment. So let me start with the first person who hit their button, Director Peck.
Ding, ding, ding. Jordan, thank you. Vice Mayor Webb, Assistant City Manager, James, Padre, everybody that served, thank you for your time. I know this has been really, really difficult, but so very necessary, and it just reminds me that sometimes the proverbial, you know what, has to hit the fan, and that ordinance was just absolutely appalling. I was angry. A lot of us were. And thank you to Director Campuris and Vice Mayor Webb for tabling it and for everybody to have the compassionate spirit to come together. I think it took something ugly like that to bring this very inclusive group of people together at the same table. As you said, nonprofit, business leaders, faith-based communities, city government, all there. And as Vice Mayor has said, it's not perfect, but it's a beginning. And I think this shows, to me, the true nature of our city, because I believe we are a city of compassion at the core. And I'm really so proud of all of you, and thank you for your time and your dedication, and let's do it.
Well, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Stacia and James in the city manager's office who spent hours, got up earlier than we did to get everyone coffee and that sort of thing. But James did yeoman's work as well. So,
Director Hendricks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your presentation, but I really want to ask you, have you met with, this is in Ward 1, where everything comes into Ward 1. You're aware of that?
I wasn't aware that everything comes into Ward 1, but I was aware that that is located in Ward 1. Yes,
okay, in Ward 1. And what I can say to you, has anybody talked with the neighbors out there?
Not specifically. We've actually had very open meetings. We've had public notices on our meetings. We've had numerous articles on our meetings. We're going to have more meetings. People are welcome to come, and we are individually meeting with a lot of people. So ultimately, that is our long-term goal. If y'all allow us to proceed, we will be doing so.
Okay, so I hope that at the meeting, this is when we will vote on this. Is that right, Mayor? At the next meeting?
I think you're going to be allowing us to go forward. I don't know if you're going to be voting on the ordinance.
Well, I think, if I understand, the ordinance that was drafted will be withdrawn.
Okay.
And I don't know whether we're going to need any type of resolution to adopt this report.
Okay. But what I want to share with you is that to be cognizant of aware that the residents in that neighborhood may support it and they may not, and I think the committee needs to know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Director Richardson, you're next, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jordan, I want to echo Director Peck's thanks for you guys and the work that you've done. Your question about the meeting time, I had a question about that as well. I thought it was pretty interesting. A 7:30 meeting time, especially designed to garner public support. I thought it was a real interesting time to try to gather people from the community. I don't know if that was, you met at the same time every meeting, but I know the initial meeting was at 7:30, which I thought was very interesting.
The next one will be, I believe, at 8. Is that correct? Okay. 8 on the 27th. At 7:30, the thought was that we'd get people there before they could come by before work.
Okay, thank you.
We've actually had some meetings at 5, I believe. So we haven't had a standardized time, but we are thoughtful on trying to be as inclusive as possible, and that's why we've actually tried to stay away from traditional work hours. But inevitably, some of these meetings happen during work hours.
So, Mayor, back to the point, we're not adopting the ordinance, and we're not going to adopt a resolution, I don't think. What is it going to take for us to operationalize this? What action are we going to take from us to
I'll get with the city manager's office, and obviously there's going to be some expense to the tent that will be placed and whatever additional van transportation there may be. So that will have to be determined, and then if it's necessary for something to come before the board, then we'll bring it forward.
So what mechanism are we going to utilize to evaluate the effectiveness of our transportation system, since we evaluate almost everything we fund? Whether it's you got to answer?
Mayor, may I address that? We've actually taken a data-based approach. I mean, it's about metrics, and we've actually discussed that in detail. Our next meeting, that's exactly what we're going to be discussing, is logistics and metrics. The thought being that you're going to be measuring, are these people have they been served at other places? Are they showing up to what numbers? Are the vans full? How many trips are they making? We're going to do an exhaustive approach and hopefully have y'all some data to really determine whether it's worthwhile continuing beyond 90 days or not.
You know, that will be provided before we vote on this. would that be provided to us before we vote on this?
That will be provided at once it's enacted, in terms of once, if y'all allow us to go proceed on this night at trial, which please don't start it tomorrow, because we need to get some more things in place before the actual clock starts ticking. But we would measure the data, use the metrics and collect the data during that 90-day period, and then report back to y'all after that. Is the theory? Is that correct? Okay.
Well, Jordan, this is less for you, but it's more for us up here. Typically, when we fund initiatives, any kind of programs, one of the things we want to do before we fund them or support them, we like to know what kind of evaluation mechanism they have in place to show the effectiveness of what they're doing. And Mayor, board members, I'm not sure this is the way we move forward before programs or initiatives we funded. And Lance, you know, it's time for me to use this word. I'm flummoxed about the rationale and the impetus for this. Were the homeless people complaining? I mean, what was the rationale for adopting this in the first place?
That was the ordinance. The ordinance that came to light was the rationale. Several of us stood up, found ourselves then on the committee after we voiced some concern.
So the issue was, the concern was generated not from the people who were receiving the services, it was from the people who were affected in what kind of way? It was, yes, it was how our city would be perceived and how those people would be impacted. And that was the gist of the concern and why this committee was formed, as I understand it. But through that, there's been some unification and some teamwork and some I mean, we've gotten to know each other. You know, we're all sitting at the same table, and as I've been told by the people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have, that this is the first time this type of thing's ever been done. And so we're trying. I'm not saying we're going to succeed, but we're trying. Yeah, I mean, it didn't originate from you, Jordan, but I'm curious in terms of how this became, what was the rationale for us to put all this in place, Mayor? Who reported as an issue? Where did it come back to us as an issue, something important enough we need to have a committee to meet frequently and that it warranted this kind of action? I haven't heard that yet. I still haven't heard the rationale or impetus for us moving forward with this. I don't know, was it, Mayor, did you bring it up or?
No,
I'm just joking, Mayor.
Mr. Jones, do you want to respond?
Okay, Mayor.
Well, there were various calls, concerns dealing with once the bridge was opened, whether or not feeding could take place back there, and based on a number of discussions, an ordinance was drafted, and an ordinance was put before this group. And when the ordinance was put before the group, that's when there was a lot of more discussion in this room, and then the ordinance was tabled. And Directors Compuris and Vice Mayor Webb suggested, instead of discussing the ordinance further, let's form a committee that's look and see if there are other solutions that might exist other than this particular ordinance.
So calls and concerns coming from boat operators or business owners, I mean, where'd they come from? I'm still not heard.
Director Richardson, about 4 or 5 years, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even remember when it was, concerns were expressed by groups that were associated with the use of the park and associated with the river market about a problem with homeless feeding. And we were asked to look into what opportunities a city might have in being able to place some restrictions on the feeding. We pretty much found out that you can't just make an outright ban of that. But we found an ordinance out of Orlando, which was upheld through the federal circuit courts and the U.S. Supreme Court did not review, that is similar to an ordinance out of Houston, which would set up park districts and would allow a park district to be used so many times a year. That was where the ordinance came from, and the timing, as Mr. Jones said, was from nothing's really gone on for the last year or so because of the building of the Broadway Bridge. But now that that construction is about to be complete, how are we going to deal with this? The board took the action it did after the ordinance was drafted to say, wait a second, you know, this is a much bigger policy issue than putting forth an ordinance. And so we need to have a lot of discussion, which is what you've heard here today. In terms of what you need to do, it was a motion to table for 45 days. Today is the 45th day. So this ordinance not being placed back on the agenda means that's the end of the ordinance. And I get the impression that's what's going to happen. In terms of the additional 90 days, and do we want to adopt the recommendation, which I think is what Jordan's asking for, is yes, we can have a resolution on Tuesday to go forward with that, and I'll get that drafted up and work with you, and you're going to have to send me your email because I forgot it. But so that the language says this is what we're trying to do over its additional 90 days. That's very common. And then in terms of the expenditures, the mayor is correct that that's something to be looked at by the mayor and Mr. Moore to be reported to the board.
Well, Tom, I guess if I'm understanding you correctly, the concern was centrally located, if I'm understanding you correctly. It was on one specific area, if I heard you correctly.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes to that. I think in my memory there was another area of the city that there was a concern about, but the main area was in the Riverfront Park.
But the impact is not going to be centrally located. The impact is going to spread throughout the whole city, correct? It's not going to be just, it's not just going to be centrally located. It's not going to have an emphasis or focus on this one area. It's going to be applicable to multiple areas in our community.
Right, because the homeless are located in multiple areas of our community.
Herb, I'm sorry. You'll have an opportunity next Tuesday to be able. Let me finish, please. What we do on these agenda meetings is we do not have a provision to hear from the public. We have this committee which was asked to make a report, and so with all due respect to our procedures, you'll be given adequate time to be able to comment. But if we have this resolution prepared for Tuesday, that will be the appropriate time for you to be able to talk. If it's on the agenda, it will be, and we will recognize people who wish to speak. It won't be on the citizen communication portion. So it will not have that 3-minute restriction, if that's.
There's a considerable amount of discussion and actually decision-making going on now.
Well, no, there's no decision-making going on now. There's a recommendation that's been made, and there's been dialogue. So we'll have a resolution that will come forward, and then I'll be happy to recognize you at that time. Right, and I do remember that Jordan said that this doesn't prohibit anybody from feeding anywhere else at whatever time they want to, too. So, you know, that, I think, is one of the things.
There's no prohibition
whatsoever.
whatsoever.
No prohibition, so.
Well, Mayor, I think I may have.
Sir, with all due, well, I just.
We'll be able to hear from you on Tuesday. Thank you.
And I'll remind everyone that the vans that are taking people there will also be there taking them back.
And they'll be funded by the city.
That's correct.
Staffed by the city. Mayor, I'd like to, I think I inadvertently caused Mr. Rude to get up and speak by talking so much. Mr. Rude, during our summer before my senior year in high school, me and him and his son went to visit Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Brown, MIT, and Columbia. I think by me talking so much up here, I think he felt like he can jump up and talk, so I'm sorry. Man, that's, I mean, I don't understand why we're even talking about this. So
all right.
I don't have any more questions. I'm not gonna get in.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First, Jordan, I echo what you've heard from others in that I think you and the group you have led and put together to be commended for the work you've done. You called yourself arrow catchers or spear catchers. You might also call yourself Solomons because obviously some people expect you to split the baby before you get through here. I think that one of the most interesting things that came out of your presentation is the fact that you've identified so many locations right now where feeding has been going on, of which most people may have been unaware. And it does point out again that, as Cappy says, that there's a lot of compassion at work in this city. And what you're facing, anytime you undertake to change the order of things, it's a very, very difficult task. But these are established programs and everything else. But hopefully as you begin discussing and looking at what can be accomplished with the social services and other things that are going to be available down there, we'll have a case of synergy where 2 + 2 can maybe equal 5. And as a city, we can do a lot more for the homeless collectively than going a lot of different directions. But I commend you and the committee and the work you've done.
Thank you.
I encourage you not to give up, keep going forward.
Thank you.
Director Campuris, you're recognized, please.
Well, Jordan, I think y'all did a great job. If I had thought, if my expectations had been what you've done, I was way under what I thought you'd provide, and so I think what you and your committee did was great. I am tempted to try to answer my more cerebral and younger board member on why we need this ordinance. I think that anytime you're doing something for a group of people, that you really need to be doing everything for them. It'd be a little bit like me as a doctor taking care of one little aspect and leaving the other aspects alone. It's not good medicine, and it's not good taking care of people. And in my thought is that our number one goal need to be how we take care of the people that are less fortunate in the city. And I think that entails not only feeding and providing food for their stomachs, but it's giving them opportunity, giving them a direction, giving them social service, giving them jobs, giving them all the things that they need. We weren't doing that. Secondly, it was adding to a distraction by having everybody doing this in one place. So I think there is a problem, and I think that what this is a way to try and do something different than no one else has done before that I know of. And so I think that it is a great step forward for this community as far as what we're trying to do. We don't need to be just saying, here's some food, take your styrofoam, see you tomorrow, and think that we're really accomplishing anything, in my opinion. So I think this gets us a way to start taking care of this. Mayor, I don't know how we, or Tom, I don't know how we formally do this, but do we vote to take the ordinance off?
I think it expires by virtue of the 45 days. Is that what I understood, Mr. Carpenter?
Right. I mean, 45 days it was tabled. If it's not put on the agenda.
Okay, so we've taken care of that part of it.
Right.
Then I would formally like you to make a resolution
Yeah.
encompassing exactly what's on this slide to be prepared for us to vote on next week.
And
I will do that. Can I make one comment on that? Mr. Jones and I spoke, and it may be possible we can do this without a formal resolution on the expenditure part. So I want to be able to explore that too and let you know Friday.
Whatever you need to have done, I just want to be able to codify this and let them have the opportunity. And I would put in there a start date for the clock ticking. I don't think it's fair to say next Wednesday it starts the first day of 90 days.
Well, and I think we need time, if you approve this, from a logistical standpoint, and to work out the details from a timing
I think
before
that needs to be
starts.
in whatever we vote on. It needs to say, we're voting on this, there's a 90-day trial, there has to be reporting back, it starts at date certain.
Between now and next Tuesday, we will identify the timeline that's necessary for the tent and the additional van transportation, which are the key issues for it.
Do you need a formal resolution asking you to do that?
No, I've already asked Mr. Carpenter to go ahead and draft a resolution.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jordan, first of all, I just want to say thank you to you and everybody on the committee. I know you took a lot of arrows. I was glad I could take a few of them for you. But to some of the folks who were not there, I think it's important to note that there were a number of, the room was full at almost every meeting. And there were a number of people from the homeless community, besides the homeless community members who were on the committee. And there was one gentleman at one meeting, and I don't know this person's name, who said that the homeless are not hungry. You know, it's the people in the houses that that you really need to be looking after. Those are the people who are hungry. And I think by having this resource map and by putting it on the website the way other cities does, it does send a message that we care, and that there are a lot of people in the community who care. And I think that while that might be perceived as a small thing, I think it's an important thing. And one of the goals was to show that we could work together and come up with something that is certainly not perfect. I think we all agree that it's not, but that this is an opportunity. And I've gone to Homeless Coalition meetings. I've gone to a lot of meetings and been involved in the issue of hunger for many years. But to show that we could just collaborate on something little gave us this opportunity to collaborate and bring people who had never been to the table to talk about a community like they have in Austin, or programs like they have in Denver, and these places around the country that are looked at as really tackling the underlying issues. And I think that's what we have the chance to do. And this group we're putting together to go to Austin in August to do a 4-day seminar with Community First. It's this opportunity is something that we have not had. Right. And you and all of the folks, not only on the committee, but all of the folks who were in the room at every single meeting, who felt free to speak out and say things that others disagreed with, but it was in a safe space, are really to be applauded. So thank you, Jordan, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you. And it has been somewhat contentious among the groups. I know that that's historically how it's been in our community in the past. This is a chance to see if something can work. It's a complex process. You know, expectations, we're going to be setting them, you know, reasonable, so that we can inch our way towards that finish line. And as Gabe pointed out, was quoted in the paper, I think it was last week, about, you know, this pertained primarily to the group that was feeding under the bridge, and that group was primarily consisted of faith-based churches, and they're to be commended for their service. And we're committed to talking to each and every one of them. But, you know, some people have positioned us as anything short of feeding whenever, whomever, and however we want. That means we're against the homeless. And in fact, we're actually trying to do something even bigger than just feeding. We're trying to lift them up and trying to provide them access to services. So Gabe's point in the paper was, if this is going to work, we're going to have volunteers from that same faith-based community to walk side by side with us to help us, the greater city, help these people even more. So,
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Well, I think y'all have accomplished something that's been needed in this city for a long time. In the 25 years I've been here, we've seen 3 successful things with the homeless: the North Little Rock Partnership, Jericho Way, and the van. They have been the highlights of the 25 years dealing with homeless. And I would like to ask you, I know that your main thing is to getting the people out of the downtown area to serve them. Would you consider, while you're looking at this, of having some of the church vans in Southwest Little Rock and in West Little Rock to provide van services to the facility or to the tent to have meals, and then they can take them back to their community? Because I don't see very much buy-in from the whole community. We're talking about the downtown community. But I would like to see Southwest be brought in by asking the churches to provide their vans to bring the people down to Jericho Way to have dinner and then take them back. It would then give their community some involvement, and maybe that could spread to other areas besides transportation. And also the West Little Rock churches, because I'm sure that the vans are not going to go out to some of Director Hines and Director Wright's location. So maybe if they're picking up out in those locations, then those churches and those congregations can become involved, because churches are the number one that we're going to have serving these people. But we need to bring in the whole community and not stop with just a few.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I have a feeling if we get some progress is contagious, and hopefully we're going to be asking people, because the city should not be solely relying upon providing additional services above and beyond what you're already doing. You're doing more than some cities, comparable to your size. So we're going to have to rely on others to bring in other services such as transportation in other areas of the city. And I wholeheartedly agree, we will be asking.
I know Director Richardson and I was at Lonely's dedication of their new community center, their new, youth center, gym and everything. And they was talking about becoming more involved in the community. But I think we've got several churches in Southwest that have vans that every day except Sunday sits with their youth. So I would like to help you come up with a list of the churches in West Little Rock and in Southwest Little Rock that would be interested in being part of this.
I think we would welcome your help and support, and we'd love to have you at our next meeting on the 27th, where we're going to be discussing those very things.
Now, I go to animal service meetings, and we go at 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., so this would be a later meeting for me, 2 a.m. This is my point. We load dogs and cats on vehicles, and we send them to, if you want to know the city in the United States that has a shortage of cats, it's Dallas. We send cats from Little Rock to Dallas. We also send dogs to Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and Kansas. So if you want to go to an early meeting, you can go to 2 or 5 o'clock at the Animal Village. So your meeting would be late for me.
Okay. You can come to my house, and you could help me with my kids at between 2 and 3 or 5, but I commend you on your efforts.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
The thing I wanted to ask you about the meeting, particular meeting, I have never been notified about a meeting. So I wish that you would do that. Even I can let the residents know within that area.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're meeting. And another thing, as far as the bridge, has someone said to the homeless you can no longer meet under the bridge? What's that all about?
No, it's actually closed right now. The bridge is closed because of construction.
I know all of that, but you keep saying that the bridge. Why is the bridge a conversation?
Because once it becomes open again.
I know about the bridge, that they were sleeping under that before the construction started, and I know that nobody that was not allowed in that area could even go into that area. But maybe, Mayor, has anybody from the city said that no longer homeless can be underneath that bridge?
Nobody said that, but it's, as Jordan said, it's been closed for about 3 years, almost 3 years, while the Broadway Bridge was under construction. Okay. And it's still closed. So
primarily the groups that were feeding under there have bounced around, and over the last 18 months they have been using Brother Joe's location across the street from Doe's, and he's been opening his doors.
Let me ask you this. This is probably my last question. The impact always seems to come to one, and as large as the city is, I can understand. There was something that had started for the homeless out in Ward 6. Did you all look at that?
I'm not aware of anything. We know that homelessness knows no boundaries. So
I know that, but the boundary right now is Ward 1, and I'm going to tell you now. We need to wait and see what the residents are going to do. I mean, you all are sitting here deciding, and not you, but this board will decide.
The maps that were shown previously, I think, show that there's feeding done in other wards as well on a regular basis. I mean,
from what I've heard from the recommendations, it's Ward 1 right now. Is it anything else? And I see this as a boundary for race.
Race, yeah.
Ward 4.
I love to see them eat, but it's a racial thing. If it's going to stick in, what are you saying? It's going to stick in Ward 1.
Ward 2.
Ma'am, to your point about spreading out, the needs beyond where Jericho Way is, and if this model works, it could be replicated to other sites around the city.
I do, because I know there had been some concern a few weeks or months ago when the mayor had mentioned about purchasing property, putting homeless people in that area, and all hell broke out, okay? So I just want to make you all aware.
What was that? Director Hines, you're recognized,
Thank
please.
you. Jordan and your committee, I want to thank you guys for your hard work. I know it's been tough. I harangued Alan into getting on the committee because we'd had some discussions about homeless issues, and I know that he's got a servant's heart. And I think the biggest thing that he addressed once he had his first meeting was, you know, we can feed them, but we need to teach them to fish. And part of that teaching them to fish is getting them to plug into the services and stuff that we can provide. And we've seen it be very successful at Jericho Way. So I commend you guys on your efforts to plugging them in. I think one of the other things I think that I had become aware of before that was just the fact that the folks that want to help the homeless the most didn't want to cooperate to help the homeless, which to me just seemed antithetical. And I think you guys have come a long way. I know there's some distrust between the homeless advocates and folks wanting to work with them in City Hall. And, you know, I think y'all are hopefully going a long way into creating some type of coalition that can coordinate efforts within the city, something that we don't have to regulate, something that's self-regulating that we don't have to regulate or create an ordinance to try to stop something. So I think you guys have come leaps and bounds, and I appreciate your efforts, and I applaud everybody that's been involved in the process. I think this is, you know, I'm a small government guy, and I think the less government can do, the better off we are. And if we can self-regulate and do it ourselves without having to get us from getting involved, it's the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. Lance, you're small anyways. A lot of people have asked questions and made comments that I thought were very appropriate. Dean talked about that we want to give them something besides food. And Vice Mayor talked about there are people in homes that needed services as well. So I think it fits that purpose. This plan that we have, or this recommendation that you presented to us, it talks about a 10 at Jericho Way, and it talks about transportation. And I'm assuming that you have more specifics for those locations, how to draw the people in. I don't know if marketing is the right way, but information to the community to let them know that this is going to happen. Do you have specifics on that?
That is the purpose of the meeting on the 27th, and you're more than welcome to attend. But we're going to be talking about specifics, logistics, how to make sure that we communicate effectively with those who are volunteering. You know, I've been educated by Dot and others on about how word travels within the homeless community itself, and so. We're educating ourselves and open to trying any and all options. So we'll be discussing those things at that meeting. Yes, ma'am.
And did I hear you say that you had some people that had stepped up to provide food at the tent?
Yes.
And that's already organized?
Yes. We've actually had people come out of the woodwork, because they've, you know, the universal theme was they've always wanted to help, and they've helped one off, but they've never had a systematic approach to helping. And so Gabe and his team have really worked well. On, I guess I'm the arrow catcher. He's catching those arrows, but those are good arrows, I guess. And so we've got, of course, Alan and his team, David's Burgers, have stepped up. We've got the Greens who've stepped up with Whole Hog in North Little Rock. We've got Daniel Bryant with his litany of restaurants and operations have offered to help. The Clinton Foundation's offered to help, and we've actually, you know, they're going to provide a site, but also, you know, they have a monumental class of volunteers, and they also do service projects, and they do them in force and in mass, and if, you know, if we could show this can work, they can get behind this, and it can be a service day. You know, Stephanie Street's already offered those resources. And so that's positive. And that's just today. I mean, we're
Right.
getting more and more. I think, Gabe, you could probably tell you that you're getting more and more inquiries every day.
Hopefully after Eric's story runs tomorrow, we'll have more.
See, Eric's helping promoting the cause. We appreciate it.
And then you're planning on like 3 meals a day?
No, ma'am, this would just be dinner.
Just dinner?
This would
Okay.
just be dinner, but it's a start.
Okay. And I know you've got a meeting on the 27th. How soon do you think that you would be ready to begin the trial?
I don't want to speak before the committee, but personally, I believe that we're going to set those things kind of on the 27th. But being optimistic, I don't see any way we're going to be ready for 20, 30 days out.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Director Wyrick, just so everybody knows, Jericho Way already serves daily breakfast and lunch. I know there's approximately 150 at lunch. I mean, people find their way there. They also have a van. We have a bus service, a van service that picks people up in the mornings
Right.
as well. So
Right.
there's a substantial amount of feeding that already goes on there when the building is open.
Yeah, our information's not quite all together, so I was just trying to understand, what your plans were. So I appreciate that information, though,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Director Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jordan, the questions that we're raising are not criticism of you, and thankful for the work that you did. And this didn't come from you, so we really appreciate the work that you've done for us. And this is not criticism by no means of you and the work you've done. We're certainly appreciative. Mayor, what I'm recognizing is a complete paradigm shift with respect to how we're couching this issue. Lance, I'm going to go back to flummox again, because when we talked about Jericho Way and the location of it, I don't think I'm suffering from selective amnesia. It seemed to me like we have more of a focus on the location of that building rather than supportive services. And now tonight I'm hearing that the emphasis of what we're doing now, why are we doing this, is make sure we're offering the supportive services that are needed with this population. I just think that's a real change with respect to how we're dealing with this issue. I'm just still confused, still flummoxed, Lance. We didn't seem like we had the same emphasis when we talked about the location of Jericho Way than we are right now. Now I'm hearing supportive services, want to help them, it's more than feeding them. And I don't have selective amnesia. And I'm going to go back and look at the tapes, but it doesn't seem like we had that same kind of aggressive kind of attitude in terms of moving forward with these kind of services that we're couching tonight. That's it for me, Mayor. I didn't talk to you.
Well, I think if you look at the agreement we have with DePaul International that run Jericho Way, you're going to see that it has a whole array of services that they are committed to providing, and that was really the essence of the document and of what Jericho Way is all about. So the opportunity to educate the homeless as well while we're doing this feeding and letting them know that those services are available is very, very critical and very, very important. And it is trying to do more than just feed them. I think, as was said, some of our homeless people who participated said that going hungry is not the big challenge that we have. It is the fact of trying to get to the other services, whether it be unemployment, whether it be housing, whether it be mental health or medical health issues that we've got to deal with. Those are all part of the process. Clothing. I mean, there's a whole array of things that Jericho Way and others, the Canvas community and others, provide these services for. So, this is a trial basis. It's a start. I'm glad to see people are working together. There's been homeless providers have been meeting for years, but this has brought in a new level of investment and involvement with people out of the community, citizens, businesses, people who want to make sure that we do everything we can to try and give a helping hand to this whole process. And I think that's what's different about this committee, is that it's brought in not just providers, it's brought in other elements of our business community and other people and other citizens, along with these faith-based organizations who are willing to sit together and listen about how we can try and move this forward. So as Jordan said, it's not necessarily perfect. There are going to be people that probably disagree, but it's at least a step in the right direction, and let's try it and see how far we can go. All right, Director Campuris.
Well, just to maybe help people understand my position on this. When we did Jericho Way, we thought this was the answer. We were going to make this was going to be what we're going to do. but it's like a baby. I mean, the baby learns to crawl first and then wobble along and then walk and then run. And we have to evolve in our understanding of how we take care of this group of people. And it is not just feeding people. If that's all we're doing, we're failing them. We're failing our community and we're failing ourselves. And this is an evolutionary process, and I'm proud of y'all for helping us understand that it is an evolutionary process. And we need to be trying to figure out through y'all and through other suggestions how we can move the dial. There's going to be some people in this group of people who only want to be fed. I want to be fed, leave me alone. That's fine. But we need to give the opportunity to people who want more than that to be fed with their minds and their stomachs and their opportunities and things like that. And that's the reason I'm hopeful for that we can do this for 90 days. It gives you all 90 days to see how you tweak it, whether we have multiple sites. Jones already brought up 2 or 3 great ideas of what to do, about how to bring more people into this situation. And I think it's an evolutionary process that we need to embrace and move forward with. And I'm very hopeful that we can really help a significant number of the people that are in our community.
Director Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for my tardiness. I wanted to address the city provide van transportation component because I had asked for an expansion of the van program, and I had been told that it had been done, but it wasn't successful to get transportation to some of the homeless people that I see up and down Colonel Glenn and in those areas. So will this be an expanded outreach to try to get them to access the services? Because I don't think that they access the services that are being provided at all. And
I'm gonna let James, if you don't mind, answer that.
Well, and Director Wright, you're correct. We did extend van services to other areas of the city to try. We did it for about a month. And when no one was being picked up to take to Jericho Way, then we no longer drove out to certain areas. As part of the discussion moving forward, you know, we can, we've talked about picking up where the vans normally pick up. We can pick up at other locations as long as there are people, you know, who will ride the bus and let us take them.
Well, will there be any outreach to educate those people as to what's available to them? I mean, if we don't, like, I know several sites in the woods and large camps, that's from my understanding of, but is there anyone that will be going out to those camps to make information available to people that are living in them?
That's something that I think the committee will discuss, and a lot of, I think, the individuals, you know, talk among themselves from what we're learning.
Director Wright, if I could mention, we have on staff. The city manager has on staff an outreach coordinator, liaison for the homeless, Chris Porter, who's been working in that area. And I think what you're saying is that it would be good if we can have a way to make sure that at other times when the van when the van has a route in the morning and the van has a route in the afternoon, but during the interim times, if there's somebody that could go out there and really try to provide some information to the people that you see on the street that are homeless, that would be a way to begin that outreach. A lot of the evolution of these programs that are successful usually have an outreach coordinator, and it's a tough job. They're going into camps. They're hitting, you know, they're talking to people on the streets. It's a unique individual or individuals that have the talent and the ability to sit there, talk to people, and try to get them to come in and get services that are available. But that's part of the 10-year plan that was developed about 10 years ago. Not last, because I remember when I first got elected, we talked about the 10-year plan, and of course Jericho Way is an important element of that really vaulted us up to get us up to speed on the issue of the 10-year plan. So my point is that outreach coordinator idea is
that
another component that is important that helps us to educate these people. So whether they're getting educated, whether they're getting fed at Jericho Way about the services that are in that building, or whether it's an outreach coordinator, all of those things should help to get people open to asking for the kind of services that are available.
Thank you.
Director Henderson, you still have?
I'll know that I'm not against the homeless, but I want you to know that as a ward representative, is that I don't know whether you keep up with the news and all that, but usually Ward 1 is a dumping ground, okay? And I will be there for you. I'm a Christian, and I do know the Bible tell you to take care of people in situations that you're talking about. A lot of people don't like to talk about Jesus Christ, but I do, because that's who has brought me this far, okay? And I will be supporting you, but I can tell you this. If the community ran up, that's another story, okay? I don't run nothing. This board runs everything up here. I'm outnumbered up here, okay?
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a question for the city attorney. I mean, one of the goals of even having this committee was to avoid that horrible ordinance. And now I think we know that we don't have to do anything on that, and it's going away. But it seemed like to me that we didn't have to have any kind of resolution or anything on this, that we just move forward. Is that incorrect?
That's what I said earlier, Vice Mayor, is that I think I'd had a conversation while y'all were talking with Mr. Jones, and I think it's something that we can handle just by memorandum to the board, and if so, that's what we're going to prepare.
Well, let's clarify that, because I think Director Campuris asked for a resolution.
Well, he actually, no, what you said is whatever I think would be the appropriate way to go.
Well, then we'll tell Mr. Rule he gets his 3 minutes at Citizen Communications. Okay, thank you very much, Jordan. And thank you all to the committee members for all the hard work you put in and the hard work that's going to continue. Are you afraid of a resolution? You don't want that discussion. We're ready to conclude this meeting, but I want you to know that yesterday was Director Wright's birthday, so we wish you a happy birthday, Doris. And if there's no other business to come before us this afternoon, thank you all very much for attending.